reality is that Republicans, unfortunately, have too often cowered in the corner, wringing their hands about quote-unquote shutdown. Stop accepting the rhetoric of the left in the media.
And that is the crisis that our country is facing right now. And that is the level of gravity that each of us should be treating the country's finances and our economic policy with right now. People in our country are asking themselves if they can afford to put another loaf of bread in their cart.
Catholics for Lake, where are you, John?
Kari Lake has asked yours truly to get involved and see what I can do to help my fellow Catholics get behind her and help her win the governorship of the state of Arizona.
At the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We are going into the breach, brothers and sisters, on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing.
Once again, let us go into the breach.
Yeah, Joe, this is going to be a good conversation. I'm going to talk about a couple of different things. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go in to the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Remember, visit the website, kick the tires, look under the hood, listen to the lineup. King Dude, Mike Shirt's got a great show going on there, a great station, and we encourage everybody to become subscribers. So we're going to jump right into it tonight. Joe Resinello, the title of this video is and audio is Catholics for Kari Lake. And we're going to get into that because our lineup tonight, a couple things. We think this is going to be a very important show. We have John Horvat with us returning. He's a friend of the show. We're going to talk to John about the new language. Joe Resinello, the new language in a post-Roe America. And John, who knows how to dissect all this, John Horvat, is going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to have John Yep, okay? Now, John is co-chair of the Catholics for Kari Lake. Now, we're going to talk about that. Now, that might seem, Joe Resinello, to a lot of people to be specific to Arizona, but it's not. And we're going to get into why we're having this conversation with John Yep. We're going to give all Americans, not just Arizonans, a link where they could go and support a few things that are going on. There's a billboard campaign. There's both Kari Lake's campaign. There's Blake Masters' campaign against really dyed-in-the-wool leftists, all right? Mark Kelly's proven himself to be a leftist. We know Katie Hobbs is on record as being a real radical, okay? So we're going to have John Yep come on. We're going to have a great conversation with John and let everybody know what's going on in Arizona and the importance of all the elections in Arizona on November 8th. And then finally, we're going to move north of the border and talk about a couple things going on up there. One, where in Canada, obviously, they're going through what we're going through here with inflation and everything else, but also a theme that Joe and I have brought up on this show plenty of times. What does it mean to be a conservative? Well, if being conservative means I got to accept abortion and gay marriage and gender ideology, well, guess what? You could take your conservatism and, well, this is a family show. We'll tell you what to do with it, okay? I'm not interested in that brand of conservatism. So this is going to be a great conversation. We encourage you all to share it with your friends and comment in the comment box. And let's get rocking. Joe Resinello, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, let's bring in John Horvat from Tradition Family and Property, and let's talk about it. John's a good friend of the show. Joe, you want to give him a little bio?
Absolutely. Now, many of you know, especially at the Crusade Channel, John Horvat's been on with Mike Church numerous times, and a good friend of the Crusade Channel and of Joe and Joe. John Horvat is a scholar, researcher, educator, international speaker, and author of Return to Order, from a frenzied economy to an organic Christian society. I've read that book. I've listened to it on audio. I recommend it. Is a very good diagnosis of what our problems are, okay? So we recommend that, where we've been and how we got here and where we need to go. His writings have appeared worldwide, including the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, Christian Post, Washington Times, ABC, Crisis Magazine, LifeSite News, and C-SPAN. For more than 2 decades, he's been researching and writing about the socioeconomic crisis in the United States. John Horvat II, welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe, our friend.
Great to be back on. Always good to be on.
Absolutely. Joe Resinello.
John, let's talk about the word choice. Is the pro-abortion movement abandoning the word itself? I mean, you hear it a lot, and frankly, you're not hearing it as much anymore.
Right. Yeah. It is a big word. I mean, it's a very powerful word that the pro abortion people have used for years and years and years. But I think with the post Dobbs situation, they are changing their rhetoric, and I was very surprised to read about this in several leftist publications and seeing it also being used by very very radical pro-abortion people, that they're saying that choice or pro-choice or even my body my choice is no longer the choice. They say, well, we need to change that because the word choice simply isn't radical enough for them. And so they're saying we have to sort of abandon this word. And they're even saying now something like my body, my decision, because decision is much more decisive, it's much more deliberative. A choice is so, it's chocolate or vanilla, red or white, black or white, one way or the other. So they're getting away from the word choice, and they have on several occasions, you know, in events or even sometimes in print, they are trying to change the rhetoric to reflect more radical statements, more radical positions.
John Horvat, let me ask you this, joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel. Is it really coming down to now, and I think I'm right, I'd like your opinion on this, it's a matter of political will now, where they're saying flat out, for decades we've heard there's a debate. Well, the conservatives call us Catholics, call us conservatives, pro-life people. We've won every debate on every level: scientific, moral, ethical, constitutional, as Sam Alito just educated us on. It's been bad law. Everybody knew it, including Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They've lost every argument in the public square. Now it just comes down to political will. They say that you need to shout your abortion, be proud of your abortion, nothing to be ashamed of. We don't care if it's a human being. We don't care if you win in an argument whether or not it's a human being. We don't care. We want the choice to do it. Does it come down to the political will of conservatives to finally step up and say, no, this is not allowed anymore? Because that's what they're doing.
Right. I think you make a very good point. We need to, this is not the time to back down. This is not the time to make compromises. We are actually winning, and we have been winning for a long time, as you say. I remember a cover of Time magazine in 2013 that said, 50 years ago, Roe v. Wade was decided in the Supreme Court, and we've been losing ever since. And that I think that's expressed it well, because, as you say, the grassroots pro-life movement, it's just simply outmaneuvered everything in all fields, and just is an amazing example of perseverance and prayer and effort and heroism. So I think we need to keep that up. This is not the time. I think they're feeling that they need to that they did lose, and one of the reasons why I think they changed the word choice is they say, well, we need to radicalize, and to radicalize, we need to say who we are, cost what it may, even though it's horrible, and even though abortion is a horrible thing, we need to get everybody to say, one way or the other, but we're not going to stay in the middle anymore. And so they're trying to out the moderates and say, well, you have to make a choice, a decision rather, and that decision has to be one way or the other, but we can't go back to what it was before the Dobbs decision.
Right, because they'll lose. John Horvat's joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello on the Crusade channel. Joe Rossinello.
Let's talk about what this reveals about the pro-abortion movement. I mean, it shows just how nefarious it is. I mean, there was a time, like you said, John, they used softer words. The science wasn't as definitive. Ultrasounds weren't as in depth. I mean, you could get an ultrasound now. It's like watching television. It's like clear as day.
Right.
The science is so clear. I mean, it comes down to, I don't think it's about the child. I think it's about sex, John. I'll be honest with you. I really believe that people just will not put down the idea that sex is basically the way they view it. It's just a casual activity to receive pleasure, and that's not how God intended it, clearly. And here's another thing: like when one basically, buys into that lifestyle, it doesn't even make for good marriages. It doesn't prepare you for
Mhm.
marriage.
Mhm.
Marriage, is not about like just casually having pleasure. I mean, you have children, there's deep sacrifices involved, at least in
Mhm.
any good marriage.
Right.
Talk about this because I think it really opens them up to what they're all about. And it's frankly, John, it's sad. It really is sad. And I do think the answer is we have to convert hearts, and that's where the prayer comes in. But talk about what it does reveal about the movement itself, because it's dark.
Right, it is. I think that's the perfect word for it. It is dark, and because, as you say, it is about sexual activity and the desire to always be engaged in those activities without consequences, and the abortion makes that possible. But I think it goes even farther than that because it goes against all morality, all restrictions to human activities. And so there is a very natural segue between almost abortion and homosexual activities. Planned Parenthood is now very much in the transgender business, transitioning business. So it is all. I think it is a revolt against God and God's law, a revolt against God, against the morality that has been that is imposed upon us by our nature. So that it is really a hatred against human nature for that matter, because it is something very very dark, and you will also see those links not only between the LGBTQ and abortion, but Satanism and abortion. It's there. We see it.
Right. And when people point out, I mean, when you have a young girl who's obviously, I don't want to, I don't want to be judgmental. When you see a young girl on a video on YouTube saying, "I have the right to kill my baby,"
Mhm.
it shows you they've abandoned any idea of having any argument. As I said earlier,
Mhm.
we pro-life movement, Catholics in particular, have won the argument. We made the argument. They wanted everybody to just go away and accept it.
Mhm.
I have a question on a bit more of a constitutional level, John. John Horvat joining us at the front
Mhm.
line with Joe and Joe. Let's say guys like, or let's say the Senate stayed Democrat, and let's say they gained a couple seats. They want to codify Roe versus Wade into federal law. Isn't that a loser at the Supreme Court also? Am I missing this? The Supreme Court has said this is not a federal issue. This is
Mhm.
a state's issue. Now, we don't believe that. We think that they should find, rightfully, the right to life in the Constitution. The Supreme Court should rule that way and abolish abortion completely. We
Right.
understand the political reality, okay? But on a federal level, they won't be able to do that either. And there's going to be another Supreme Court decision, and it's going to take entirely away from the federal government's ability to do anything about abortion. Am I wrong about that?
Well, I think it can be codified. I mean, I don't think there's that many obstacles for them codifying it into federal law. It is a state's issue. They admit it is a state's issue, but I don't know if they make it exclusively so. It is a very dangerous proposition if it does pass this law, which would codify abortion into federal law. I hope we don't get there. I think we need to work very hard so that we don't get there, because these laws have a tendency to change especially when they're in the hands of Democrats that doesn't really necessarily reflect the Constitution.
No, exactly. Exactly. Joe Rossinello.
John, I mean, I know what you guys do, and I respect it greatly. In fact, I participate in it every first Saturday. I pray the Rosary publicly, and that's one of the things for those who don't know about Tradition, Family, and Property (TFP). You should go on their website. You guys are on the front line. You make a very nice presentation. You're peacefully prayerful. And you stand up to a lot of these, forces out there, and many of them are getting more violent. We just saw that young man in Philadelphia, which is not far from you, Mark Hoke. He got
Mhm.
arrested.
Mhm.
My wife recently told me, I think it might have been in North Carolina. And if I'm wrong, please correct me, someone in the chat room. But a number of people just got arrested there for pro-life activities. They're really ramping it up. And, you know, it makes you think a little bit. How are we to go about what we do? I mean, because, you know, civil disobedience sometimes can entail going to jail. We're starting to see that. And
Mhm.
while I don't think it will hold up in court as those type of cases push forward, it's going to get a little bit tougher. It really is. I mean, the climate's getting hot.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that we do when we go on campaigns is that we always make sure that what we do is peaceful and legal. If the least thing that you gets out of hand, if the least if you throw a punch, if you do something that is wrong and can be prosecuted, it will be prosecuted. So we are extremely careful, and I think everybody has to be careful not to give them any pretext for going against you, because that is not the issue. The issue is not the law. It's not these nuisance laws or access laws. It is the issue at hand: abortion, LGBT agenda, critical race theory. We could be out there, but we need to be very careful, and we can't let the guard down. And many times when we are on campaign and doing things on campus, we will close down. We will just we have it down so you can close down in a couple minutes, and you're out of there, and they don't even know what happens. So that's you have to be able to be very flexible to close down and then set right back up at another place. But always be careful, and now more than ever, we have to be very, very careful not to give them a pretext. They would just love to have these pretexts, and it doesn't do our cause any good to do that. Now, in the case of Mark, there is no pretext. He didn't do anything wrong. So it just shows how far they're going. They really are going far, and we need to be very careful.
No, absolutely. And as Joe said, I mean, you know, I guess one of the unintended consequences of wanting and desiring and praying for Roe versus Wade to get overturned is we're going to have to deal with, not just on the ground, the enemy getting in our face. They've done that, you know, going back a long time, mocking, spitting, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But now we have a regime that has weaponized the Department of Justice. After a court threw the case out, in the case, if anybody doesn't know about it, Mark
Yeah.
Hoke basically prevented a man from assaulting his child, okay,
Yeah.
going after his child. And the court threw that out, dismissed the charges, and Merrick Garland, at the behest of Joe Biden, went and arrested this guy, okay? And it's something where, like you said, John, we have to be able to carry our cross in this, and
Yeah.
we cannot react violently.
And
John, go ahead, John,
and if
please.
the other side does react violently and does assault us, I think we need to do the opposite. We need to we always call the police. We carry through and say, well, let's get them arrested. Let's get something on their record, because this is unjust, and if we can, we will do that.
Absolutely. John Horvat, thank you for coming on the show. Where could our listeners get a copy of Return to Order and support TFP?
You can go to the website www.returntoorder.org. There you'll find about the book, Return to Order. And then you can also go to www.tfp.org. There you'll find our main website with a lot of articles, a lot of resources, anything. You'll see it's a very full website, so you can go there and find out more about us.
And that's one of the things we need. We need knowledge. We need to know what's going on out there, okay? And what you do and what TFP does, you give us that ammunition, that figurative ammunition, where we could confront them in this battleground of ideas. So John Horvat, as always, brother, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, John.
Yeah, it's been great.
All right, so we'll see you soon, John.
All right.
Joe Resinello, so important, Joe. So important. I mean, because we have to know. If we don't know, Joe, what the enemy is doing, then we're never gonna win. We're never gonna win this battle. We're just never gonna do it. And we're grateful to John and TFP for giving us all the knowledge that we need. Now, let's yes, we're gonna have John Yep on. Let's move over to John Yep. And people might say, well, why are we talking to this guy from Arizona? Okay. I'm in New Jersey or I'm in New York, and yeah, I might be conservative, but how is anything I do here or anything I do for let's say Arizona, how is that going to help? But we're going to talk to John about how that can help. And we're going to expand the conversation, let's say, beyond just Arizona and talk about the importance of it. So, John Ross, let's bring John Yep into the conversation. John Yep, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe, brother.
Hey, fellas, good to be here.
Hey, John, what's up, bro?
John, quick bio on you. Give us a quick, what's your background and what are you doing? What are you doing in Arizona as a Catholic man? Why is it important?
So I was telling the guys I'm from Chicago originally, and my wife and we immigrated from Illinois to Arizona like 4 years ago, and have set up shop here. Love the state, love the people, and I have my own business it's a consulting business that I manage. And every election season, at least the last 2 cycles, it's like one of those. I'm not going to get involved with elections. I'll just do my thing. I got enough on my plate, but then you look at what's at stake and it's like, how can I sit this one out? Right. So what my role is right now, currently, Kari Lake has asked myself to head up the Catholic Coalition for her. Now, we could just stop and say that's some tangential, non-important thing, just a nominal thing. But when you really understand the importance of the Catholic vote, it's crucial. It really is. And I can get more into that later, but that's who I am.
And thank you for that, John Yep, joining us. Now, John, you're co-chair. Am I correct?
Yes, Jesse Romero and I share the responsibility. So anything that goes wrong is on him, and then if I do it right, it's on me. So that was part of our agreement before we took on this job together. It's in writing.
Now, John, we titled this broadcast tonight. Obviously, we had a conversation before you came on. We'll have a conversation after. We wanted people to know why it's important. Now, I'm going to give you my view, and here's the thing. I want you to talk about those national state figures from other states that have come to Arizona in support of Kari Lake, and also talk about the need to not only go out and vote for Kari Lake, because just on a practical level, if you're inclined to voting for Kari Lake, if you're in the voting booth, you're probably going to vote for Blake Masters and the Republicans right down the line. Not because the Republicans are all great and wonderful all the time, but these leftists need to be defeated. So tell our audience here on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the importance for all of us to support Kari Lake in Arizona.
Absolutely. Arizona is a flash word. It really is. It took national stage starting on November 3rd, 2020, when Fox News called it first as having gone to Biden. Everyone knew, no way. So they attacked us first, if you will, on that night, right, by calling a wrongful winner, we believe, right? And then afterwards, Arizona led the way in so many areas in terms of election integrity and just trying to take a peek underneath what actually happened, right? They got the audit going and went after that, right? And some figures rose out of that. They were nobodies, so to speak. And then they really, like Mark Fincham, for instance, who spearheaded that whole election integrity effort. Now he's running for, Secretary of State. And it was when you're asking about Arizona, I got a snapshot of what people think about Arizona when about 4 weeks ago, there was a fundraiser it's actually for Mark. It was in Newport Beach. And he had, General Flynn as a speaker and Steve Bannon. Would you believe that the venue that they had it at was canceled not once, but twice within the space of like 72 hours? And then they fired the lady the little events manager who accepted it the second time. And they finally got a third venue. But it was interesting to see California people doing a fundraiser there because they know that Arizona is ground zero in a lot of ways. So, I'm honored to be part of the state, and it's a battleground.
John Yep's joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel. Joe Rossinello.
John, let's talk about political identity. I mean, we've said this for a long time. I mean, the Democratic Party, I'm 52 years old, has changed dramatically. When I was a young guy, they were supposedly the party of the working man, the party for unions. My dad was a barber. People who basically worked hard. That was their party. That party, this is a changed party. And I've been saying this for such a long time. this is not the party of your Irish grandfather who worked on the Union. It just simply isn't. It's a party that embraces global ideas and is crushing the middle class. I mean, you don't have to take my word for it to see it. I mean, the party that is in control right now, this administration, is about ideology. It's not about results. They're crushing people. They simply are. Talk about that, because I think that's where we have to win minds and hearts, John. It's not, listen, if you're really rich and you have an insulated life like a lot of rich people do, it doesn't matter where you live, whether you live in Hawaii to Maine, it doesn't matter who the president is. But if you're a working person, it does. The cost of groceries, the cost of gas, crime, immigration, unfettered borders, these affect regular people. We don't live in insulated like bubbles. And people, what we have to do, people like yourself and people like Joe and I and people like Jesse and all the rest, we have to convince people in the middle. We have to say, listen, I know you have this identity, and frankly, it's something we have to shred, but they don't support you. They simply don't. The facts are not there. Talk about that, because it's real time, and I think that's where we win.
Absolutely. I love that point, Joe. It's about people have to wake up. This is not the party of yesteryear. And to that point, obviously I'm Catholic. I'm operating and moving the Catholic Coalition. Catholics have to realize that there is in church history a precedent for actually the church coming out and officially condemning participation in some political parties, and I think that conversation needs to be pushed again. It's got to start at the lay level, but eventually we're going to need church leaders who will be brave enough to actually say, if you're a part of the Democrat Party and you want to call yourself Catholic, no, I'm sorry. And one of we're doing an event this Thursday, which is basically kind of underscoring and addressing the question: what the heck is a Catholic, anyways? I mean, you look at the top races. We have governor, secretary of state, Senate, and 2 key congressional races here in Arizona. Would you believe that all 5 of them are close, and all 5 of them, down to a T, are going up against Democrats who refer to themselves as Catholic, and they're using that terminology. We've got to win back that word, because just because you cry Lord, Lord doesn't mean you get to enter the kingdom of heaven, as this famous guy used to say, named Jesus, right? You have to do the will of the Heavenly Father. So we want to make the point that there are candidates who are not baptized Catholics, but yet their principles and policies make them the clear Catholic choice. And because it's not the party of yesteryear, like you were saying, Joe, all of our verbiage that we've heard from church leaders for the last 30 years about, it's typical, November, what do you hear? Here's a document forming faithful citizenship, vote your conscience. That's when it's about higher taxes or lower taxes. You can get away with that. But this ain't about higher taxes or lower taxes. It's much worse.
John, let me cut you off just for a second, please. Talk about Katie Hobbs. Talk about, she identifies as Catholic, okay? And talk about, it's not just about abortion, even though it is the primary issue I won't speak for you. It's a primary issue for Joe and I, and why we voted for Trump in 2016 for judges. Okay. But on so many levels, when you talk about immigration, when you talk about a lot of different things, that they are anti-Catholic on a number of different things. Absolutely. They're not moderate. Yeah. They're not moderate or middle of the road on anything. She's a radical, and I want you to talk about that. John Yep joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe.
A good point too, because the last poll that came out from it was Real Clear Politics combined with the EWTN to produce a poll about where Catholics stand right now across the country on Biden and the current Congress. Obviously, thankfully, rather, most of them disapproved. But the one issue that they were most worried about, it wasn't abortion, but it was inflation. And I think that's a Catholic principle that needs to be reclaimed. You bring down Catholic principles in a country, and what happens is that it flourishes. The economy flourishes. There's a reason our country's been the greatest in the world. It's because we followed Catholic. We're as one author says so well. It says the United States of America is wired Catholic, labeled Protestant, and currently functioning secular. That's Timothy Gordon. And I believe that. So when we actually live that Catholic principles of respect for the human person, also it's going to come into our economy. and then inflation, and all stuff comes down, right? It's just like it's set in a different way. So fine, you're most worried about inflation. Well, that's right, because guess what? It's not the Catholic way either. If we have if we really bring those principles into our economy and our decision making, it's not going to be that way. We saw that with Trump; he brought everything down, right? So,
right. Thank you for that, John Yep. Joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. John, so what's going on this week? I want to talk about how we can maybe enlist the troops out there, not just people in Arizona, but people in other states, to understand the importance of keeping Arizona red, particularly at the top, particularly with governor and senator. So talk about what you have going on and how people can support.
There's you want to concretely support us, there's an event going on this Thursday. It's the Feast of Our Lady of Fatima, which is, for Catholics to know, that it's the apparition that really went out against, warned us of the advance of communism and socialism, right? And this event on Thursday is really to raise the question in the public sphere: what is a Catholic? And to understand our power that we have to move people out to vote. We're, there, like in Kari's campaign, there's gun owners for Kari, there's law enforcement for Kari. That's awesome, but what brings us together is a much deeper purpose. And Thursday we'll be joined by General Michael Flynn as our keynote speaker, Father James Altman, the famous priest who said you can't be Catholic Democrat. He said it. He said the words you're not supposed to say, and Blake Masters and some other candidates. Kari might join us, but it's not for sure yet. She's got about 7 events a day right now. So we're there to really bring that question and raise that question. They're similar to the documentary that came out, What is a Woman, by Matt Walsh, which was fantastic, right? It's like we're going to take on the venture of creating a documentary, What is a Catholic? And bring that in. And what does it mean to be, And if you don't fit what it is, what the church has always understood for 2,000 years, then you can't use that term, right? So that event's going to be big. It's going to be here in Paradise Valley. If you want to look at it, see what we got going on, it's c4c.com, CFORC.com. Or if you want to you're not able to make it, even if you're from another state, we're doing a massive billboard campaign. And we have right online right now, we're going to put a picture up of, it's awesome. It's a picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and it has a picture of Christ in the womb to show that, Christ was in the womb, the first tabernacle of Mary, right? And you can help us rally the state, even if you live outside Arizona.
And I think people should. John Yep, we have time probably for one more question. I'm going to hand it over to Joe Resinello.
John, I think what you're doing is spot on. We have to educate people what it means to be Catholic. I know Priests for Life have a very good guide on Catholic voting, because all issues are not the same. And I think a lot of people look at things in an improper way, and it's not because I'm saying it. Some issues are intrinsically evil, and we have to educate people on that. Again, we have to stop with the political identity. We have to basically, and I agree with you. At this present time, you can't be a Catholic and vote for a Democrat if you take your faith seriously. Listen, we can't transition young children into the opposite sex. They support that. As a Catholic, as a rational being,
as a human being, yeah,
that.
Exactly.
But as a Catholic, you cannot support that. You cannot support radicalized abortion. As a Catholic, these are intrinsic evils. You simply cannot. Now, what churches can do, if they don't want to get that overt, is simply do this. Put in your bulletin a list of the issues. Run them straight down the gamut and list what the church teaches. Right to the catechism. And you figure it out for yourself. Listen, we all have to stand before God. We all have to stand before God. And ultimately, the issues speak for themselves. If all churches just did that, these are our issues, and this is what the church says about them, and then you decide. It's up to you. God proposes. He does not impose. But with that, we all have to stand in front of him All of us, and not all issues are the same. They simply aren't. And I think that's where the church can do a better job in educating. But if they're not going to do that, and that's on them, I can't control them, but I can control me. And what I'm going to do is just do that. Then it's on you. What are your thoughts? Because I think that's what we have to do. It begins with education. Again, a way to change minds and hearts.
Oh, would that be the case that we could have parish bulletins, which just said it clearly, because we have that clarity. It's with the truth so clear. But people have to realize, the church is a human institution. And as we have a deep state, we have a deep church. And it doesn't help that 45% of the budget for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, which is the organizing arm of the Catholic Church in the U.S., comes from the federal government. When you take government grants, you're really ultimately, in a lot of ways, controlled by them, and that's why
You're
there's
100% right.
so many issues
You're
on immigration.
100% right, John.
That's not. I mean, there has to be a restructuring, and this is not really. I mean, the topic is a longer topic, but of how the finances are organized in the church, because in the beginning it was not so. Actually, we've revamped as we see right now in the United States, how it's all about big government. The same things actually happen in the Catholic Church here in the U.S. and also in Europe with Germany. And the money goes literally through their taxes back to the church. So that's why we're stuck, right?
You're 100% correct. 100% correct. A lot of people don't know that money makes the ball move. It shows, and I'm going to comment on that. I mean, that's a conversation. We could talk a whole show about it, but it shows a lack of faith. It shows a lack of faith. I don't need the government's money. God has money and he provides. It shows we don't trust him. That's what it shows. I'm telling you this. In my view, we have to trust God. When things are done properly, God provides. John, with this show, we have all this equipment. Do you know we have not put up one single dollar, Joe and I? Not a dollar. All of it was raised. All of it. Not a cent. That to me is an affirmation. We have to trust God. The church shouldn't take a dime for the government. And you're 100% correct. That is a problem. But outside of that, particularly Catholic men, we have to make our voices heard. Knights of Columbus, podcasts, local community organizations, stuff that like TFP. We have to educate people. We have to tell them what the issues are. And frankly, we have to encourage people to live a sacramental life because that opens their eyes.
John, I want to ask you. I know we said it was one final question, but I want to ask you a question because you're on the ground here. You're trying to get Kari Lake elected. All right. If you're just joining us, John Yep, he is the co-chair for Catholics for Kari Lake. We're trying here in Arizona. I'm now in Arizona, and Joe's still in New Jersey, but I'm an Arizonan now. Okay. Talk, if you would, because you're going to have more knowledge of this. Joe and I think that the Hispanic community is lied to. Okay. We think that the Democrat Party either wants to keep them in the dark or just flat out lie to them. Okay. A lot of people coming across that border, let's be clear, they're Catholic. Okay. Many Hispanics in Arizona are Catholic. Some other, let's say Christians, but primarily Catholic. We think that if the Hispanics take Arizona actually knew what the Democrat Party stands for, the Democrats would want to kick them back across the border. In other words, the Democrats would close the border, but they take advantage of their vote because they keep them in the dark. Are we making inroads? Final question. Are we making inroads with the Hispanic Catholic community in Arizona to educate them on what this party stands for? And that the Democrats, all they have to do is open their mouth, and these Hispanics will say, hell no, I'm not voting. I'm not voting for them.
Absolutely. Spot on. I actually lived for about 7 years in Latino world. So got to really understand and love the people a lot. And it was eye-opening, and they're totally being used. But they're waking up. We look at the stats. There's a reason that Trump got so many of them back, right? Now it's a battle because more come in and we have to change these, and it doesn't help that George Soros made a large purchase of Latino radio stations. What was it, like 6 months ago? So
in Florida, yeah.
Yeah, so both sides know that. We just did, obviously, since most of them are Catholic. I work a lot with the head of the Latino Coalition, and we just did a joint event with Eduardo Verástegui down in Tucson, so right in the right in the bread and butter area. So no, but it's a battle. We got to use them. I mean, what the Democrats did to the African Americans, they're doing the same thing now to the Hispanics. I mean, I don't really believe that they love them like they've said they have. It doesn't. Love shows itself in action. So they're just being used, but they're waking up. They're smart, and they're such good people.
No, absolutely. And that I think is the key, is that we have to let our Hispanic brothers and sisters know, and we are. I just think even more so. I mean, look, Joe and I are Italian American, right? Half the Italian American Catholics in this country are gone. They're off the rails. They're not even Catholic anymore. Okay. They become American. That's their identity. And they don't care. They don't care about, I'm sorry if that sounds judgmental. They don't care. Okay. Hispanics, not so much. Okay. They I think are more, and they're not monolithic, but they are more unified, I think, in their Catholicism. I think the right message from Kari Lake, from Blake Masters, on these key issues, including immigration, by the way, because most Hispanics who have come here legally, they want the border wall too. John, quick comments on that, and then one more time where people could support Kari Lake and everything you're doing.
So follow Kari on social. I mean, she's got such a great stream of presence there. She's got like 260,000 there on Instagram, so she's taking her messages out there. It's just a great campaign. A lot of life enthusiasm. I mean, look what Trump said about her yesterday, right? He said that woman is special, and he meant it, and she is. And so, we've got to get behind. We have to. I also like, by the way, how Kari has made it a point, and it's trickled down to the different campaign level inside, how it's not so much pointing out the negative of the other side, as much as the beauty of our side. And that's a huge thing. Doesn't mean you totally disregard it. I mean, at the other side, like Katie Hobbs is talking the crazy stuff, you say it, right? But so I do really I think that's a special and important trait that the campaign's been running, right? And it's propelled them so hard. But if you want, you can follow us on social there. Also, if you C4C.com, Catholics for Catholics is doing that event on Thursday nights. I'll be there, of course. And and just say a prayer that we do this,
Absolutely. John, real quick, very, very short answer. Where are the polls right now? Not that we trust polls, but just as some kind of an indicator, do we know where the polls are right now?
Kari was like 1 point ahead about just recently. So Blake needs a little bit of help, but hopefully this last the rally on Sunday is going to help push him over too. But it's getting close, getting very close.
John Yep. Listen, brother, you have our support at the front line with Joe and Joe. We're gonna blast this out to as many people as we can. We would encourage anybody in New Jersey, New York, California, if you're conservative and a person of goodwill, you don't even have to be Catholic. Support Kari Lake. Support her. What happens in Arizona will have an effect on other things going on in other parts of the country, particularly on immigration. Okay. So we would encourage you all. And John, I heard recently, all eyes are on Arizona. And I think it's true. John Yep, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, brother.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for doing what you're doing as well.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right, sounds good. Talk later.
All right. God bless you.
All right.
Joe Resinello on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. You're with the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe, so true. I mean, it's like a lot of what we think is going on in this country. I think, to one degree or another, more autonomy, if you want to put it like that, is going back to the states. I think it started with Roe versus Wade, and local politics, subsidiarity, okay? Local politics, state politics. That's where we really have to be focusing our attention. So I think this race is important. I think this race is something that we have to make sure we come out ahead of. And I think that's why Glenn Youngkin was here from Virginia. I think Kristi Noem was here. Ron DeSantis was here. They understand the importance of that. Joe, I'm going to give you a final word on that segment.
Well, again, what I was stressing, I think it's going to separate the sheep from the goats. You mentioned that Kari Lake's opponent is Catholic. There is a wrong idea of what a Catholic is. And it's not my idea. It's in the catechism.
No, you're talking about Katie Hobbs, you mean?
No. She's running, Kari Lake's, who she's running against who?
She's running against Katie Hobbs, who
correct.
does identify as Catholic. Yeah.
She's Catholic though, am I correct?
Right,
Baptized.
Katie.
That's what
Katie
I'm
has.
saying. There's just a wrong impression of what a Catholic is. Here's the thing: it's written down. People could be listening to this and simply say, like, "Oh, that's your opinion." It's not my opinion. It's what the church teaches. The church, sadly, I mean, people both inside and outside the church don't adhere sometimes to what the church teaches. But the good thing about the Catholic Church is this: it's written down. We have to just take the time and research it. That's the beauty of our age. One of the good things, the research is right on your computer.
Right.
Again, there are so many guides to Catholic voting. They're out there. Look them up. It will guide you. Don't take my word for it. If you don't like me, fine. But it's in print. Look at it and pray upon it. Pray upon it. Because seriously, at the end of the day, your political identity isn't going to get you to heaven.
No.
It simply isn't. And people have to put that down.
Joe Rossinello, I couldn't agree with you more here at the front line with Joe and Joe. And one of the things I think is a problem, Joe, and then we'll make a move up north of the border to Canada and talk about conservatism and what conservatism means. That's something that Joe and I have spoken about on the show before. But the problem, Joe, is that, and this is a problem in the church, and I think this is a problem of yes, there are people who don't have faith. You say it all the time. Those men who lack faith, particularly amongst our leadership. Okay, they conflate those areas that fall under my prudential judgment with those areas that are intrinsic evils, and they do that to try to convince you that as long as you vote for the Democrats because they're pro-immigration, or they're for the poor, or they're for the working class, or they're for the middle class, or they're for progressive taxation, okay, all of which, by the way, fall under my prudential judgment as a Catholic, they conflate that with abortion, transgenderism, gay marriage, the whole 9 yards. And that's a mistake. Not all issues are the same. Abortion and your view of abortion is not the same, does not carry the same gravity as your position on immigration. Talk about that, Joe, for a second. In other
Well,
words, we have
listen,
to
in all
separate.
honesty, though, immigration is an issue. It's not
No,
an
Joe,
intrinsic.
it's an issue that
No, no,
falls
no.
under
But my
my
point is,
potential
like, we
judgment.
have to be clear. The gospel does say to take care of your neighbor, but it does say that a country should have borders.
No, but
And
that's what
that's
no, but
where
Joe,
we
but
could
that's
have a
what I mean.
conversation. But there are intrinsic evils. There are 5 of them. It's very clear, and it's not the same. But, again, no party is perfect. I could point out flaws. Like, I'll be honest with you, I'm not for Trump's idea of merit-based immigration. I don't
Nor
think
am I.
that's right. I
I
don't
don't
think
either.
it's right. As a Catholic, I don't think it's right. There's plenty of poor people who need a shot, just like someone who's an engineer. I'm not for that. But what I am saying is there are some issues that are grave, and it's not my opinion. It's not my opinion, but you know something? You say they want to convince others. Joe, I think they want to convince themselves. It's a
Sure.
rationalization. And I see that, to be honest with you, in the Catholic Church. People convince themselves of a lot of things that, frankly, aren't written down. Look at the text. What the text says is what the church teaches, not what Joe Resinello says. It's not my church. It's Jesus's church. I follow the word. It's not my church. And that's how people have to look at it. And again, it's then put in your court. I will say this. I remember when Obama ran the second time, and I will speak for my hometown parish. The pastor did put it in the bulletin. He didn't say don't vote for Barack Obama, but he did put the issues in the bulletin, and I give him credit for it. Because you know something? At that point, that he did his job. You see, it comes down to this. I can't control other people, but what I can do is control me. And what I am to do, because I know the truth, because I've taken the time to read it, I've studied it. And every Catholic, that is your responsibility. And while I can control me, I can speak the truth, and then it's up to you. It's then up to you. And listen, we're all going to stand before Jesus Christ, and he's not going to ask you if you're a Republican or a Democrat. He's going to ask you if you were a good follower of Jesus Christ, which means that you didn't just say, I believe in him, I'm saved. I took to heart what he said and the church said, because the church is an extension of Jesus Christ, and I was obedient. That's it. Comes down to that.
No, Joe, listen, it's sometimes we have to shout that from the rooftops, brother, as best we can. Let's see. A lot of people are going to say, "Well, you guys are just Republicans." You guys, well, no,
Not
actually,
really. I'll be
we're not
critical of the
really.
Republicans.
All right, yeah, because listen, I would have a hard time going to the if he was still around and I was living in Arizona, I'd have a hard time going to vote for Jeff Flake. Okay, I'd have a hard time voting for Lisa Murkowski. It's not about Republican and Democrat. All right, and to prove our point here, okay, let's go a little north of the border. Let's go to Canada for a minute. Now, Joe, I'm just gonna lay it out, and I want really your comments on this, because I think this is a dangerous road as conservatives that we're going down. It's happening in America. But let me just let our audience here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel in on what happened. This is out of life sight in Calgary, Alberta. Danielle Smith was elected as the United Conservative Party leader on Thursday, and made her the de facto premier of the Western Canadian province. Now, here's the thing, though, Joe. She's running on rhetoric, pro-freedom. She's on all the hot button issues that happened in the last couple years. Okay, about vaccines and lockdowns. She's going to get a good response from conservatives. Okay, she says she's pro-liberty and all this stuff. Here's the problem, Joe, and this is where I think we're making a very, very big mistake. Joe, I think I wouldn't vote for her. Given the choice, I would really have to pray on it hard, because despite her seeming credentials as a pro-individual liberty advocate, okay, she also told LifeSite News she would not revisit the bubble zone law, which basically is enacted by the far left Democrats in Canada, that penalize pro-life activism within 50 meters of an abortion mill. She says she's pro-choice up until 24 weeks, which means she's just pro-abortion as far as we're concerned. Okay, and she added that her position on abortion doesn't really align with either side. Well, yes, it does, because the pro-aborts, even though they're not about compromise at all, you'll fit right in with them because you still want to keep abortion legal in Alberta. And she said basically on the issue of pronouns, which is tantamount to lying. If you force me to use a pronoun that's not correct, you're asking me to lie. Okay, it's polite to use preferred pronouns that don't match the biology of the person. Now, Joe, this is not a conservative, Joe. It's not. Why? Because you're anti-lockdowns? You're anti-vaccine? I know Democrats. I've spoken to Democrats who were anti-vaccine. They didn't want to take the vaccine. I've spoken to liberals who didn't like the lockdown. She's not a conservative, and the Canadians are going to make a mistake, or have made a mistake, by actually voting for this brand of conservatism, which, Joe Resinello, I'm going to hand it over to you, I don't really think is conservative at all.
It isn't. And frankly, as a Catholic, you can't vote for someone who's pro-death. Joe, abortion at 24 weeks is 6 months.
Right.
A child at 6 months can live outside the womb. I mean, this is so twisted. That means I vote for someone else, even if it's a third party who's not going to win. You cannot compromise yourself. You can't compromise. These are the type of politicians that don't serve anyone. All they're doing, frankly, is just gauging the opinion of people. Leaders don't gauge opinions. Leaders have a vision. And basically what they say is this: follow me. I will fight your fight. I see the outcome. It's like a dad. A dad sees the outcome of life for his kid. If we do this, if we concentrate on this, this is where we're going to be in 20 years, in 25 years. It's a long game. That's what a leader does. This is not a leader. This is someone who's gauging political opinion through polls and is kind of calculating how best I could win.
But Joe, they think it's a winner. See, here's the thing.
It could very well be.
I'm going to tell you something, okay? Because obviously this smacks of more a libertarian point of view. I watched the Blake Masters Mark Kelly debate, Okay. Now, I forgot the guy's name, Mark something, something, something. He's up there. They put him up there because they want him to siphon off votes from Blake Masters, because you have conservatives who might lean towards the libertarian. Why, Joe? Because of abortion. Okay. They're not going to vote for Mark Kelly. But if you go and vote for this guy, Mark, again, I forgot his name, the libertarian for governor, or excuse me, senator in Arizona, well, you really are just voting for Mark Kelly. But here's the thing, Joe. They think it's a winner. This guy got up there, and while, when he had an opportunity to say something, it was obviously not tilted towards him because he's going to lose. So, whatever. But he said, I don't want the government's got nothing to do with your body, your time, your money. And like, this was his political philosophy. And I want to tell him, I say, dude, you want to know what? That might sound good on paper. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. What you're proposing is basically what this woman up here, Danielle Smith in Calgary, Alberta, is proposing, which is you're pro-freedom under all circumstances, and you don't seem to have any boundaries whatsoever. That's the way it strikes me. And let me tell you something, Joe. I don't think they're ready, for the simple reason is this. I think most conservatives are conservatives. Not all, okay? But they actually are looking to conserve and preserve something. And these libertarians think that we're just going to eat it up when they say, well, your time, your money, your body, your treasure, your all these different things. We're in favor of just making sure you can maximize all that with as little interference from the government as possible. Joe, you can't organize a society around that either. Because whether it's your money, whether it's your body, whether it's your time, you don't want to know what? In an organized society, it doesn't all belong to you 100%. Now, as a conservative, I would say, yes, most of it does belong to you, but you do also owe something to society. So this radical libertarianism is not something I think I agree with. I know you don't agree with it, but this is what this woman, Danielle Smith, is trying to propose. And Joe, I hope it doesn't get off the ground. Joe, we're almost at the end. I'm going to give you the final word on that. Am I wrong?
Well, I try to stay away from all titles: conservative, liberal, libertarian. I know that there are buckets. I think Catholics have to just see things through the Catholic lens. Really. The problem is, and why people like this woman exist, is because our society is broken, Joe. It's just broken. I mean, people like this win for a reason. I mean, here you have states like Kansas. Let's use Kansas in the United States. It doesn't get any more red than Kansas. They did not vote for, life the way you think they would have.
Right.
Let's be honest. That is indicative of the failures of our society and how broken it is. And that's why I'm going to be honest with you again. Our answers will never be political. The foundation has to be corrected. And that comes by changing hearts and minds. Hopefully, as society weakens, and it has based upon bad choices, people will rethink their life, rethink their choices, and turn in a different direction. Some people will continue to double down and triple down and cut their nose off to spite their face. We're seeing that now. We're
Right.
seeing that right now in the United States. The same people who supported this agenda are getting bulldozed. Crime, high inflation, high grocery bills. They can't afford to have their cars. Listen, these are your policies. People have to rethink their life and their choices. And until that happens, frankly, people, as in the politicians, are a reflection of the people. And we get what we deserve. And frankly, we're getting it.
Well, that's the harsh lesson, Joe. You reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. We have to leave it there, Joe. I think this is an important show. It's a great conversation on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room's always open at crusadechannel.com/chat. We encourage you all to go on the website, go, look around and do a free trial. Listen to Mike Church, listen to Rick Barrett and their shows. Mike Church does a great job. It's an important station. That's why Joe and I are on it. And that's why Joe and I support it. Okay. And support Mike Church and Barrett and the whole lineup down there. So we would encourage you to do that. We'd also encourage you, C4C, CFORC.com, C4C, that we have to vote. We have to support Kari Lake in Arizona. All right. And you know, at the very least, we have to defeat Katie Hobbs. We have to defeat Mark Kelly. So as a new Arizonan, I encourage you all to do that. And we want to thank you all for joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. We want to thank John Horvat and John Yep for coming and joining us in our conversation. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon. You have to go. So we want to thank everybody for joining us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello on the Crusade channel. And wherever you see Joe and I on social media, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Help us out if you can. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.